Hey everybody, welcome back to JLXP with Raz. After week 7 of the LCS summer split, only 1 week remaining. And
Boom.
we were just going through topics. We're going to end up talking about at least 6 of the teams because there were
Yep.
actually big shifts for a lot of them. It's not every week where you have 3 2-0 teams and 3 0-2 teams. So 100 Thieves, CLG, and TL all 2-0'd, but C9, FlyQuest, and Golden Guardians all 0-2'd. So big shifts in momentum going into the final week of the regular season. 100 Thieves now on a 7-game win streak, COG on
Yeah.
a 5-game win streak, and then Golden Guardians and FlyQuest on 6 and 4-game losing streaks.
Oof.
We got some streaks.
Yeah. I just love the contrast between the two streaks. One is
Yeah.
just like elation, the other one's pure depression.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, the depression
that's a
streak
lot
for
to go
Golden
into.
Guardians. Okay, let's start on the realm of positivity. Player of the week, Bwipo. Fairly somewhat contentious vote, I think. Contracts,
Yeah.
Palafox, big weeks for them. FBI someday, big weeks for them as well. For you and me, I think we both voted for Bwipo. It was like the really good Olaf game he had against FlyQuest, and then
Yeah.
the absolute top diff that happened against EG. But what
Yeah.
are your thoughts more largely on TL, because they broke their streak of 5 consecutive 1-1 weeks.
Yes. I mean, clearly much happier with it. I think a lot of the times I can hit on the draft for them as a team throughout the split. Like the draft could be really poor. I know a lot of the times they have like early game drafts, and that's not bad. It's just, it doesn't fit them. And they a lot of the times misplay team fights because of it and get caught off guard. But then I think their level of play has really just started to accelerate. It's been a lot more cleaner. And then also the drafts have actually just kind of favored them naturally. They're going to more scaling draft at times. It feels like that's just like more frequently. Um, so I think both sides have been good for them. The more impressive area is just them and how they actually play the map, um, and play to advantages. Like the last game we just had, where he was on that ridiculous set game. It feels like you go into that game, you have the matchup, you play the matchup, or at least the first like 3 waves really well, call in your jungler, you
Yeah.
execute the dive. Like it felt like they had a game plan and then they followed up with it with like Core JJ coming back topside and everything. Like there was that 1v2 outplay, sure. Like that was insane from Whippo. But I think throughout of it, it was just mostly Team Liquid having an original game plan, following up with it, executing well on it, and it gave EG like zero time to breathe. And if they can do this consistently, like this is the Team Liquid that people were afraid of going into the year.
Yeah. That's like this type of win against EG. EG only has 3 losses this year, or this
Yeah.
split. It was the 45-minute game they had against COG, which was this
Yes.
like Elder Dragon trading affair. It was
Yeah.
the 100 Thieves game in the second round robin, where there was a very close Rift Herald fight. Abadaga and Huhi with Renata Azir, like basically were in a 2v3 and turned it for a
Yes.
triple kill, and then were able to carry it. And then this one was by far the most lopsided loss EG has had. So it, I think, means emotionally at least more to beat EG like this, even
Yeah.
if TL has some embarrassing and bad losses. Like they are 1-1 against TSM, right? They lost
Yeah.
pretty soundly to 100 Thieves. They've lost to C9. They've lost to COG. So obviously their record is not good, but like games like this at least prove to people that they still exist, right? That they're
Yes.
not completely washed. So it's a really, really big confidence booster for them, I think, and also for the people that support this team.
100%. It's the most substantive like win and loss. For of course like Team
Yeah.
Liquid, and for Team Liquid, of course we talked about the positive. It feels like they're on the right track and they are more on the same page and they're executing just flatly.
Yeah.
I think that's been a lot of the times, as hard as it sounds, they're just playing better individually, mechanically. And then on top of that, the negative is like, I guess you can call it negative, because you can make the case that the loss that EG had versus 100 Thieves was like a little bit to the draft as well. That was their Kai'Sa Nautilus game when it was out of meta. They had a goal in terms of diving in mid game, but when it didn't play well versus composition that did well versus that, it was just not. There was no chance for them to win. The CLG game really early on, you can also like blow away. because it was early on the split. This one is just flatly they lost to a better
Mm.
team
Hmm.
in a very clear fashion. So
Yeah, well, they
this
just
makes
kept
it so fun.
running. They just kept running top lane. Like there was
Yes.
such a disaster play. First off, when Whipple got the 1v2, but then later on when TL was crashing the Rift Herald, and I think like 4 people on EG died. Like there's no
Yeah.
coming back from that. I have a slightly different TL take in terms of how they're improving. I think when I really dive into it, their biggest issues are weirdly in close games around like 18 to 20 to 30 minutes where they still don't feel like they agree or have intuition on how to close games out. Part of
Yeah.
that comes from not playing with each other for very long. Another part of that comes with them being very inconsistent with the types of team compositions they're playing. So every team composition is a unique puzzle to solve with a different way to win the game, and it's just different every time.
Yeah.
This week, I feel like they just kind of blew people away in the early game, so it didn't matter. Like,
True.
I think FlyQuest was definitely the more complete game, weirdly enough. EG was just, this is how EG plays. They throw themselves at you, and since TL batted them away so well, they were just having this gargantuan lead. And then they still, like, they did give up the bounties, too. Like, Bwipo lost his bounty, Han Sama lost his bounty in the bottom lane, but, like, 2 bounties for a 10,000 gold lead ended up not mattering. So I don't think personally, I don't think it's solved, but I think they just got better at the thing they had already been good at, which isn't a
Yeah.
bad thing.
That's fair. I think something that's interesting as well. I know, like, coming into the split, they made it very clear. Bwipo was on the desk a lot of times
Yep.
saying that, yes, we want to play towards bot lane. Like, that's just clearly what they had it as an intent coming into the
Yep.
split. And I feel like, funny enough, their best selves has been the opposite, where they're playing away from their bot lane. They're playing towards either Bwipo. You can make the case about Bjergsen as well, but with Core JJ being a strong roaming type to
Yeah.
solidify advantages that already exist. We saw that in the split that with Alfari. It happens in this game as well. It technically kind of happened in the previous game, and I feel as though Hansama is a great laner alongside Core JJ. They've been doing well in lane, but a lot of the times I feel like they don't play well in the front to back, strong carry options. I feel like if they do succeed a little bit more with leads in Whippo and Bjergsen a little bit more aggressively, simply because Santorin works better with Bjergsen. It feels like a lot of the 2v2s that they've had throughout the year through mid has been successful, and that gives Santorin experience and gold advantages to actually push his individual matchup. And then you can make the case about how Whippo actually builds plans around his around his lane. That we're seeing more successful dive top lane, though it's easier to do that in comparison to bot lane. So that's probably just the better look for Team Liquid,
Yeah.
and I'm interested to see if they continue on with that.
Yeah. This is what Core JJ is actually best at. So maybe they got in their own heads a little bit too much of like, we must make Han Sama the carry.
Yeah.
I think they should use Han Sama's ability to lane to unlock Core to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because when Core won his MVP back when I was there for his MVP in 2020 summer, whenever he roamed, it was because him and Tactical had won lane. Like, he won lane so he could roam. He did not win lane so he could win lane harder. And that's when you really, to me, I think, get the best version of Core JJ. So I think that's a good insight from you. That's what they did today, and that's what I want to see more of from them. Next team, though, is the story of the split. CLG. Man.
Oh my God.
5-game winning streak. I would say by far the best week they've had. They took down C9 and then FlyQuest. So, dude, they are 10-5. In spring, they were 6-12. They could actually flip. They play TSM 100 Thieves and Immortals. If they just win the TSM Immortals games, they actually flip their 6-12 to a 12-6. It would be absolutely nutty. I mentioned at the end of the analyst desk, but I think this is a really fun fact. Sorry that you've already heard this. They have had 13 wins in the regular season twice. 2015 summer, 2016 spring. In both of those 13-5 splits, CLG went on to win an LCS title. If they win all 3 games and go into playoffs on an 8-game winning streak, they would be 13-5. Never did I ever think I would say this about 2022 CLG. That's the
It's insane.
super hopium angle.
Yes.
There's the doomsday angle of they getting lucky. Where are you in the spectrum evaluating this team?
More towards the super hopium than the lucky side.
Yeah.
Um, because they are just flatly a good team. Just period. And spring split, sure, that split was really rough for them. I remember when I was talking to Poom in the parking lot in spring split really early on. And I mean, the point that they had made was that for a few of their players, it's like, nerves coming onto the stage and everything like that. I know every kind of young team says that, and how much you take away from that is like, it's up to you. For me, when I heard that, I was like, that makes sense. But even if they feel comfortable on stage, they still have a lot to work on, like as a team, to be honest. Because at that time, it was like you guys would be even, then you'd get into a fight. The fight wouldn't turn out well, and then you guys would keep making mistakes. Like either they get in their own heads or something to that fact. And I was like, that's a really tough thing to unlearn. Of like being too impatient with either leads or deficits. Because if you have a deficit, you want to make a play to get back into the game. If you have a lead, there are some players that are like, okay, we can push the tempo a little bit more. Let's force fights to actually like close out the game, because that's how you end up winning in scrims a lot of the time. And a lot of times, getting players out of that mentality is difficult. They didn't do that. They're still a fast team.
Yeah. They just go.
They just go. It just feels like that they are making the better decisions. They understand the game to a deeper degree, and also they just trust each other. And there's a lot that goes in that. So people will talk about the one change that they made. I don't think that one change is the difference.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Like, there's just like, how much of it is the Dokla factor versus how much of it is the other four?
It helps. I'm sure it helps from a drafting perspective. Now, Palafox can flex his picks a little bit more easily, right?
Yone flex is really good.
Yeah, it's a nice flex that you can go for. There's a lot of other angles as well. Dokla is a grinder. I'm sure same can be said about Jenkins, but I still think they're successful with Jenkins top lane. It's more of the culture of the team that push them, and also just keeping the same players and improving the system behind closed doors. It's kind of one of those weird angles where us as analysts are like, the hell happened? And the fans especially, though the CLG fans are pleasantly surprised. It's one of those things where it's like, you don't know what happened, but that just means the coaching staff and management did a great job. And the players themselves had a strong amount of confidence that even through the losses, they're like, no, we still believe that us as players, every time they took losses last split, it was like, no, we should still win these games. And you can hear that from players, but when they say it confidently, and they can point to specific things, criticize each other and themselves, like, that's like, okay, they still have a winning mindset. Let's see where this goes. I did not expect to get anywhere near them being this far in the mix.
Dude, one player that has surprised me the most actually has been Palafox. I don't know if you're around for this, and I won't name names, but we were having like a green room conversation earlier. It was either spring or summer, and we were thinking like, have we seen Palafox have a good game? This was a while ago. And we're like, he's just like a 4 out of 10 every single game is kind of how it felt. And it made us thinking like, what is he doing? Because his laning stats are always bad, but he must be sacking to move a lot and trying to play with the team. Like that must be the thing that he's good at. But when you're not winning, it makes you just look so below average consistently. But especially during this win streak, I'm noticing how active he is, partially because it's working, partially because I think they're just more coordinated or have more cohesive team comps. But like that, for my perception of a player, that's been the biggest change, is what I thought of Palafox 3 months ago and how I think of Palafox now. Now I think he's actually very good. And a really big part of their success.
It's interesting too, because the point you made about him roaming a lot is one angle. The other angle as well is that oftentimes he'll pick assassin matchups that require strong coordination with his jungle and support to actually make it work. There's one time spring split where he was going for Akali versus Victor, and just globally, I wasn't seeing a lot of value in Akali versus Victor. The Victor would just like harass you consistently, put you under turret. It wouldn't feel good. The Akali would be behind in experience and gold. And you'd be like, okay, where does the Akali come in? Like, when does the value come in? But globally people would still play it, and the best teams
Yeah.
would actually make a lot of use of it because once you hit 6, the angle is there. Victor has a lot of struggle, and if your jungler is there at the right times, you actually just straight win the 2v2. Um, and there was that angle where yes, his games would be bad because he'd either be roaming a lot and they just wouldn't be working, or he would be playing these matchups where you need strong coordination with your jungler, or of course just like perhaps just like you need to play, if you make one small mistake, it's doomed for you,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't work out. And now I think the tweak in coordination where him and Contracts are just playing better alongside each other.
Yeah.
And the team play also is a lot more cohesive. This team's just great, and it's nice to see it. And I hope we don't jinx it. That's the last thing I want.
Okay, here's the next question.
Oh.
Because we inevitably have to do this whenever there is a new team that jumps into contender territory, and it's very difficult to come away as like the winner in these conversations, because if you say, hey, I think CLG is not a top 3 team, right? And they end up not being a top 3 team, neither one of us is going to like hammer that home and quote retweet ourselves from 3 weeks ago. We're like, see, I told you CLG would lose. But if they end up actually being a good team after you said they weren't, you have the fun egg on your face because the CLG Twitter account is so active. Okay. 100 Thieves is 12-3. EG is 12-3. CLG is 10-5. Team Liquid is 10-5. Cloud9 is 8-7. So let's just take 100 Thieves and EG out of the conversation for now. Let's just say that's top 2. Who's third? Like, not next week, not at the end of the split. Like, who's the third Worlds team?
It's TL. It's Team Liquid. It has to be. They are also just they're scaling up as a team. They're playing better as a squad. So it hurts, you know? That sucks for CLG fans out there that there are 3 teams that are clearly strong. I will still say that, they show weaknesses in themselves. Like Team Liquid will still have bad games. You're right. Like it was up until this point, I know we'll talk about it, where they're just like they can never have a clean week. So that's where my concern comes in for them, but I still feel like those are strong individual players. They are also just a great team fighting team. Like that's what they should be. That's what they currently are this week. I know it's recency bias, but it's gotten to that point now. That should be the top 3.
I also want to call out, I wish I had the person who made this comment, but they're right on the money. I have been saying, CLG is this really volatile team. They can lose to anyone and they can beat anyone. Mm-hmm. But they are 2-0 against Dignitas. They are 2-0 against Golden Guardians. They are 1-0 against Immortals. They are 1-0 against TSM. They smash bad teams. That's where their record starts looking so good. All of their losses are against better teams. So they are very aggressive, but their baseline, their floor, has been high enough to just pick up very reliable wins that in past splits they have been able to lose. So I need to tweak the way I talk about this team because they've been very reliable about beating these teams like TSM and Immortals, which makes me fairly confident they can at least get to 12. Not so sure about the 13, but I would also say I don't put them as like the favorite for a third world spot, but I am now willing to accept the fact that it could happen.
It could happen.
Yes.
It's a tough one. It could happen. And I think the trick to it is Luger, actually. Because so much of the conversation has been about mid-jungle, Dokla, ability to carry. But Luger is a player that actually had a great game today.
Yep.
And just in general has just been somebody who's ultimately a creative, probably one of our most creative AD carries. He when he first came into the league, could pick up the Kog'Maw. Sivir is something that he immediately wanted to play. The Seraphine was the first thing that they picked up. It feels like if something's in the meta, he will immediately gravitate towards it. He is somebody that will pick it up faster than most ADs. And he's the talented AD carry. Like when CLG were struggling, it was give resources to Luger. And I feel like it's great that he's kind of allowed the rest of the team to like thrive. Hey, you have Palafox and Dokla that can be carries, so he's able to actually give up those resources when needed. But I feel like because of that, people are sleeping on him. So I think that's kind of the key for CLG if they were to go into best of 5.
Yeah, big lull for CLG. The other team that they had previously been competing against was FlyQuest.
Yeah.
Who's lost 4 in a row, man.
Oh, God.
They were 7-4. We all were so happy at anointing them this solid, fundamental, strong team.
Yeah.
Now, like, they're going to be 6th, most likely. It's
Yeah.
hard to see them not ending in that. They play 100 Thieves Immortals TSM next week. So I think they can take down Immortals TSM, which will put them at 9-9, which is the same as they were in summer, which just feels
Yes.
so weirdly underwhelming with how much I felt like this team had improved.
They had improved tremendously, and I think it's hard to see that because their last 4 opponents were hard, quote unquote. Evil Geniuses and Team Liquid were 2. The other ones where you say they should have been able to beat them, C9, knowing how they've been struggling and how FlyQuest beat them last time.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can make a case for that one, but that is a tougher match. And of course, today's CLG. So it feels like we're starting to really see where you kind of like what you said, where FlyQuest really are 6th place, kind of fighting for 5th. And that sucks because that's where they were last split. It hurts. I think for me, while watching today's games, I feel like their goals are a little wafty within the game.
Okay.
Like there was an
How so?
example in I think the CLG game. They had Herald, they put a mid, and their goal was clearly that they were trading.
I remember
going
this.
for Drake.
Yeah.
Yes, they were going for Drake, and that they were giving like top turret or something like that, right? At least a waves top, at least. But they had greeted so much for mid because they took the mid turret. They ushered the Rift Herald into the second turret, and it felt like they were really confident in trying to get the utmost while doing so. And then Philip base because I think he was running out of mana. You're like, wait a minute, now we took this long for them to now be able to cross map from top side, move towards mid. Philip based and he doesn't have TP. You called it out when we were in the back. Like, oh, so we just give up Dragon, a goal that we were literally setting up for.
Yep.
And that just sucks. Like this happens a lot actually for this team, where it feels like they had a goal in mind, they were setting up around it, and then either one person makes a mistake and gets chunked before the objective, or they literally just had an outright macro error that usually comes from, in my opinion, just Philip, where he bases too late. It is not going to be a part of the map, part of the play, or mostly that actually. It's literally mostly that. Just not being there for the objective. Either bases too late when he was already there, or bases too late when he was on the top side, in the opposite side of the map. You're like, okay, I'm pretty sure we need you to play for this. And so they end up giving up more ground than they should when they have a lead. They need to be able to change that going into playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Philip's been a weird one because he was very underhyped coming into the split. Yeah. Maybe underhyped the wrong word, like just very low expectations. Kind of overperformed those expectations. Maybe coming back, like expectations are down at 2. He performs at like a 6. Now he's kind of moving down around to like a 4, which is not great. Like he was never the reason that they were improving so much. I think so much of it was their coordination as a team, which has been what has been off. Like they almost did it today. I mentioned that their mid jungle needs to succeed for the team to win. And they got first blood today with Takuya and Jose, but they were outscaled. They didn't stack dragons properly, and CLG was just, kind of better in team fights. So just this FlyQuest to me is kind of like the other side of the not as storied of a team pops off for a bit. We end up kind of anointing them, but then they drop back down.
Yeah.
You hope that they can turn it around, but I think the likelihood is very low. What it actually does, I think, is increases the importance for both CLG and TL to get a high seed, because playoff format 1 and 2 get a bye, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. We're still going to talk about C9 and 100 Thieves, but just knowing the potential of C9, you want to play FlyQuest in that first round so you can advance and then have your next best of 5 possibly qualify you for Worlds. Because if you drop that first series, your road gets ridiculously hard. I think you have to win 4 best of 5s after that to make Worlds if you drop to the loser's bracket out of the first round. So let's touch on C9 for now. Then we'll give 100 Thieves their day because they deserve it. They've been freaking awesome. But C9 is the topic at the moment. Relatively easy start to next week. Immortals TSM, then EG. But this was their doomer week. Like they had the 0-3 week 1. They washed it away because it was a different roster. They then went 8-2 with their true roster, which then drops to 8-4 this week after losing to both CLG and 100 Thieves. So what do you make of their performance this week?
I the CLG C9 game was for me heavily related on draft. I thought CLG had
Oh,
like
yeah, I
completely
actually
outdrafted
agree.
them.
That draft was,
Yeah,
I don't use the term hot garbage lightly, but that was,
it
that
was
was not a
so
good
bad.
draft.
And I do think just flatly that I think it's been said before, so this is a pretty cold take that
Yeah.
Lucian and Nami are just the most overrated bot lane right now. Um, it's something that I know. I think you said earlier a while back. I mean, the conversation, the opposite side is like Callista, Renata.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but Lucian Nami right now is being played a lot, being blinded a lot, and I thought the response here, or at least just what CLG were playing, and they were showing really early. Like they got
Hmm.
the Seraphine, they had Yone that was flex, so Palafox played that. It was a Karma bot lane, so it's like, what is actually Lucian going to do? Because that's
Yeah.
not a you really can't kill that lane. You can probably set up for a dive, but there's enough shielding and healing where you're like, okay, well, it's not possible. And then you go into team fights and you're just a insanely low range AD carry that doesn't have enough damage to puncture through that front line, and you just get blown up,
Hmm.
just flatly so. And Nami is useless as an enchanter versus like the double enchanter that they
Yeah,
have.
you're not even winning lane with Lucian Nami when you're against
Yeah,
Seraphine Karma, and then
yeah,
the Trundle pick that they blinded before anything else on CLG, and then CLG just
yeah,
did this poke comp where they can run away.
yeah.
Draft win
It
by
was.
CLG for sure, but like Cloud9 just threw them a change up right down the middle. Like it was so easy to read with the way
It
they
was.
drafted.
It was pretty bad. And so that game, I gave it. I can like give them the edge of saying, okay, fine, you've lost to CLG. You lost to them. Trying to remember the last game they played earlier on. So I guess it's irrelevant. But at the end of the day, I was like, I think they will. It will be a different fight if they end up being the 4-5 team in playoff.
Yeah.
But that has kind of been the conversation with Cloud9 as their drafts. It is a lot more. They think a lot more about it. Like the Sona coming out, I think is interesting.
Mm,
Just generally speaking, I think it was them bringing Nyla or Neela.
yeah.
It's nice to be able to see that champion, Sona Neela, but it's throwing in a few champions that you probably didn't put enough play enough games into. And I also think that Neela right now is not as good as people initially thought. Because yes, her passive sounds really enticing, like, oh, I'm just going to be permanent ahead in experience in the enemy AD. But then functionally, like, what do you provide? Because you don't have an amazing burst of damage.
Hmm.
You don't like you will not out DPS the enemy AD, be it Sivir, um, uh, Zeri. Like there are a lot of like outright ranged ADs that will out DPS you in team fights. So you are set up, it feels like, for a greater comp, which is what FBI said was like she's a niche pick.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so I think right now C9 is already kind of a tumultuous team in how they play the game, and now
Yeah.
they're throwing in drafts that are a lot harder to read, and whether or not they're actually good in the meta, and
True.
that's where they're
True.
at.
Yeah, and they also played against good opponents, right? CLG's now
True,
10-5. 100 Thieves is on a 7-game win streak. So these are the teams they need to beat if they want to go to Worlds. But
true.
it's not the most unacceptable losses when you factor in the fact that they had a weird draft and then they're putting Sven on weird champions. The Sven on enchanters and this just like super wide champion pool
Yeah,
is this is actually such a hard split to be a role swap support.
yeah,
Like honestly, because there's options are so broad with what you can do. There's way more enchanters than usual. But then there's also the fact that you need to be able to kind of hot swap to playing melees.
yeah,
We went through like 5 years where you only had to play tank engaged supports. Nautilus, Leona,
yeah,
Alistair, Rel for a bit. Thresh was like the most enchantery you had to get, but your
yeah,
stats were just so juiced you could win every lane phase. It's kind of different now, and they're putting on these champions where he literally can never step out of position,
yeah.
and then he's dying. So it's a little weird for me.
Another thing too that's definitely not helping them, because coming into this split we talked about how difficult it is going to be for Sven to come into a new role,
Yeah.
sure, but another one was going to be like him working with um Berserker, who obviously like English second language
Hmm.
is going to be difficult for both of them to be on the same page a lot of the times, especially like the first barrier is just like playing a lane properly, knowing that Sven is coming into a new role and there's a new completely different meta.
Yeah.
And then the second one is like just being on the same page about how to take trades as a duo. And of course, they came late. Like, that is another angle. I think it's less relevant now, but what is relevant is that the AD carry meta just keeps changing. Like consistently. The Sivir came
Sivers
in and people
in.
were like,
Yeah.
okay, we got to figure this one out. Then Neela is another one which they obviously like were having to sort through. You can make the case about Ezreal, and now I'm personally seeing a lot more Varus. Like, I'm just seeing a lot more change in the bottom lane with the nerfs that they put to Zeri, and Jinx. So like the meta's changed quite drastically for ADs in the past split and a half. Which doesn't help if you want to get in like on the same page on anything.
Yeah.
So I
Very
and
true.
also the bot lane is literally the hardest lane to read matchups for, because at least for solo laners, they're like, okay, I'll just get into a 1v1 with
Yep.
somebody. For bot lanes, a lot of the times, like, we just need to get a better idea of it. You're not going to get that in solo queue because you're not with the player that you want to work with. So you're getting it off of scrims, which you might doom scrims if you get the bad read. So it just sucks.
Yeah, and you can kind of 2v2 with Academy. Like if they really want to play with King and Destiny, they can. It's tricky though. It's not the same as 1v1s for sure.
Yeah.
The player that I'm kind of the most concerned about, Jensen seemed like he had such an off week, man. Like he got an early pick Azir, which I know he's very good at.
Yeah.
And I think Palafox had the upper hand of that lane as Yone. And then his Sylas game today was just really poor against, and pretty good ultimates to steal through the game. But they did fall pretty far behind and ended up not being a good team comp for him. Like if none of these things end up clicking, they're just dangerously close to not coming together. Like this is the hot proposal, because you've been pretty high on Cloud9 before.
I have been, yes.
Right?
I came at the beginning of Split saying that they would be the team that win the championship, like just on paper.
Yeah.
And they have been the farthest from it so far.
I'm not going to make you double down on that take. But if we project, since I'm not going to have you back on the show until after the first week of playoffs, actually.
Yes, true.
So, fairly likely early round matchup could be CLG versus C9.
Yeah, it could be that. That's
CLG in the 4, Cloud9 in the 5.
Yes. Oh boy.
Who takes it?
That one's tough. I think my gut is telling me, everything in my soul is telling me it's going to be C9.
Okay.
Because I did say at the beginning of the split that on paper, this was the team that should do it. To win a championship was when I say that. Just on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'll give them draft, and yes, they're still suffering of not being on the same page. The benefit of playoffs is that you know your opponent. You're going to be on one patch for a very long time.
You're not going to get surprised in draft by the fact they can play Seraphine.
Yes, and you have the chance to actually be able to respond in like game 2, game 3, all these, right? So I actually think that playoffs is perfect for them as a team to get this shit together. And I think that they are, as I said going into the split, individually very strong players. You should always have faith in like Fudge, Berserker, and Blabber, just like period, as individuals and how they play the game. If they suck as a team, that's going to be how CLG takes it. That series, the hypothetical series, is just that CLG is just a period better team.
Yeah.
So we'll see if C9 can get it together.
Yeah. We're way ahead of ourselves on this C9 versus CLG. Like, we saw them once this week, so the easy answer is CLG. Like, hey, they beat them most recently. They're 1-1 on the split. I am right now probably a prisoner of the moment, because like 9 times out of 10, I feel like I'm going to be with you and say like, yep, it's the team with, all the players that everyone thinks were super good before the year.
Yeah.
But I'm going to regret it. I'm going to go CLG.
Here we go.
I'm going to change this next week. I know I'm going to change this next week. But like literally right now, I feel like CLG could actually be better. And not because I think CLG is the super legitimate, like big Worlds contender. This C9 thing is just not working to me. Like, I've been a skeptic this whole time. This whole, like, they started 0-3, so, by the way, their main roster is actually 8-2. I'm like, bullshit, man. Like, they had 3/5 of their main roster. They would have lost a couple of those games anyway, I think. And so many of their wins have been questionable. Like, I need to call a stop to it at some point, like, for myself. Yeah. And, I know just the way sports works. And I know, like, I know how good Jensen can be, right?
Yeah.
On any given week, Jensen can literally be the best player in the league.
Yeah.
Or he can just be trash. And it looks closer to being bottom of the barrel right now, and I don't know if they have the chemistry to bring the best out of Jensen. And like the same can be true of Sven's support, right? He has these amazing Yuumi games. He has these other games where he dies like 7 times. Berserker's got the language barrier. Blabber, there's this stupid Blabber Crabber meme that never leaves him. Like there's so many feast or famine players on this team. It's like literally too much, man.
Yeah.
Is the emotions that are coming to me right now.
What'll get it down, and what I think they're saying the right things, which is that they're having the tough conversations, so when they're in the moment that they can make the right moves. And also, like what Fudge has said, is like having those long conversations with Berserker specifically, those are needed. It's gonna suck for the teams that are facing them in scrims when they're taking forever, I'm sure, like to get through whatever they need to get through.
You're like, guys, it's 25 minutes. It's it's 30 minutes. You coming? Guys, it's 5 p.m. It's we're on game 4. What's happening?
Please get in the lobby. Can we play the game? So like, but these are the right things, and I have to have faith that these players who've done it before, having conversations that they should be having, and also just having those glimpses of moments throughout the split, they're like, oh, they look amazing when they click, and I think they can do it again.
They can. They look amazing when they click.
Yeah. So I have to have that faith. That's based in what we've seen again and again. So we'll see. And if it doesn't happen because CLG is just that good, that's an even better story.
You know how much, and I'm way too early for this. It's just I'm so excited for the possibility. How much CLG Making Worlds just Fs with the league.
Does.
Literally, because there were 4 teams that all end on going to Worlds.
Yeah.
And if CLG is they were not a team that all end on going to Worlds. If half the teams that all end on going to Worlds don't make it,
oh my God,
that's carnage. That's carnage.
Calamity. What is that? That actually is the roughest offseason for some teams.
It's so exciting for the fans.
Yeah.
If they make it, it's so like it's actually I think really bad for like the economy of the LCS. If CLG messes this up.
Might be rough because now you're like, oh, so a team that's obviously not putting as much resources into it goes to Worlds. So let's not do that. Let's invest in it.
Maybe it would be really good. Maybe it would actually be really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the long term, it could be great.
Yeah. That's a conversation that should be dove into when it happens. We don't need to have it right now. 100 Thieves. I apologize, 100 Thieves. You were on a 7-game win streak. You were literally tied for first. And 37 minutes, 45 seconds in the podcast, we were finally talking about you.
Boom.
But they're good. They actually are looking better kind of in each win they have because they've found a level of consistency. I would say even more of a consistency than they found in their big win streak in spring. Yeah. Just playing very solid. Like they're not doing crazy early game dives. They're actually winning without taking that much risk.
Yeah.
Which, there could be international arguments that they would need to play a different way or something, but they're very good at it. Like they play Fly CLG TL. If they could end the year on a 10-game win streak, that would be pretty nutty.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like they, as a team, sure, they're amazing right now. They're doing pretty much what they've done going into the last few splits, I feel like.
Yeah.
Where the formula is there, it makes sense for them as a team. Someday is playing weak side as either or Nar, whatever works for them. Sejuani, thankfully, is in the meta, so you can play that as well.
Yeah. Wins that matchup.
They're playing exactly.
The Ornn matchup.
Incredible. Ornn Sej just going for a straight solo kill. But yeah, the comps I think is incredibly comfortable for them, and they're playing the way that they would in championship seasons, with like playing through mid, getting Abdaga and Closer a lead in their 2v2, and then also playing through top lane. Like, I think there's more angles to them, yes, simply because the individuals are playing better. Someday, we already just mentioned it, is insane individually now. Like, he is playing really well in lane. And that's something that cannot be understated. So this team, I think, they might just end the split first.
Yeah,
which is just something I wouldn't have said for a long time now.
We have playoff previews galore next week because Fly COGTL is not an easy schedule for them. They definitely have the difficult wins that they needed, but they play 3 top 6 teams. They play 3rd and 4th. They definitely have a mild gauntlet to run in the last week without wanting to give away too much before playoff happens. I don't think they'll actually. I don't know why I said that. There's no reason they'll hide anything with how different playoffs will be by the time they actually play these teams.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's a tester. They seem super motivated, and if I had to pick like a top performer on the team, it's weirdly like, to me, everyone's been hyped on Someday, but it's Abadaga.
Yeah.
I ragged on this guy at the start of the split. And I think I was very justified in doing so. I thought he was playing terribly. But he has 1,000% turned it around. So he has an on-off switch. Dude's super capable.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, because we had a segment, I think on Saturday. It was either Saturday or today. Pretty sure it was Saturday. Where I just like picked up basically the stats for Abadaga from week 3 to week 6, like just till recently, because like the criticisms were in the first 2 weeks, and then I think people continue to rag on that and bring that up.
Yeah.
Where I was like, he is literally playing well every one of these games. Like, and statistically, he's just the best. I think he right now is the best mid laner in the league if you're not counting the first 2 weeks. An MVP conversation, like it's gonna be tough.
Sure.
But I would probably have him in the list. Sure. Right now, it's going to be the EG players, right? Specifically, it's going to be Inspired that I think lead that pack. But Abadaga has just been the best laner for like the last 6 weeks. And the funniest thing too is that I remember last year, Jizuke was in the conversation, and his first 2 weeks were just like really atrocious. It was very similar, where he had a poor early split, and then for the rest of the split was killing it, was performing incredibly well, and the EG hype machine was on was on board. Like if Jizuke is playing well, if an EG player is playing well, the entire coaching staff is on Twitter and letting you know.
Yeah.
And so people bought into it, but there's not that equal push from Abadaga's core, other than of course the players, and then there's an interview. And so people are still kind of underselling him, where I feel as though he is performing to a high level since week 3.
100 Thieves got to get in on the propaganda, is what you're saying.
They do.
They need to sell all their players.
They need to get in there. All of their coaching staff and everything. Get out there and start hyping their boys.
Reaper, start the campaign as well. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you say that, because that is true that it's not the same social media push. But one thing that I think really works with this team is how much they talk each other up.
Yeah.
Part of that, I think, comes from being together for so long. But it just seems like they have really good positive feedback loops working on that team. FBI talks up Huhi, Closer talks up Someday, Abadaga. Even when he was running it down, he was always just like, yeah, but my teammates have my back. When at the time I was like, you can't excuse your bad play, blah, blah, blah. But it actually did. Like the teammates literally did have his back and helped him find his way to playing at the highest level again. So we'll see, man. The funny thing about this, though, is like, we literally take this moment in time from Spring Split, where we're about to go into Super Week to end the split, and we would have said C9 is a lock for top 3 in Spring if Spring had qualified teams for Worlds. They finished 4th. So literally, EG, 100 Thieves, no one is safe. If any of these teams let up with the competition that is there between the top 5 teams, they will not go to Worlds.
This reminds me of first place TSM last year.
That too, man. Yeah.
That's actually pretty insane.
1st to 4th. Playoffs is long, hard road. We're 5 weeks away still from knowing which teams go to Worlds. Okay. You know who is not going to Worlds?
Who?
Golden Guardians.
Oh, no.
It's technically possible.
I mean,
it's technically. Yeah, and technically I don't need to eat a habanero pepper yet. But I will, because TSM's not finishing top 5. I think I think we do need to have a discussion on Golden Guardians, because they have had a fall, man. Yeah. They were at 1.4-5 in summer split. They are now on a 6-game losing streak. They're 4-11. They were 9-9 in spring with really good early games, and now they're here. So what is happening, do you think, to make them this bad?
I think it's a combination of, sure, initially with the team that they had, a Blaze Olive, Ole, Pride Stalker, being the core basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, the growth maybe on, I don't know what they saw internally. It didn't feel like there was growth on stage, because the most tilting thing for players, and I'm sure coaching staff and everything, is when you have leads and consistently throw it. Because that wasn't just, it's not just this split, it's not last split. Well, you
all
can
year.
say it's last split. It's
all
all
year.
year.
Yeah.
It's all year, off season, all this stuff where it seems like it doesn't matter how much of a lead you have. Doesn't matter how much growth that you feel as a team, if you're still running into the same barriers down the stretch. And a feeling of stagnation and lack of improvement is the worst feeling when your entire team is built on that. Like, you have multiple player coaches. Like, the whole point is like we're improving in the throughout the year. There was an Arrow interview where he's saying like he has faith. This was last split, where it's like the second half is going to be better than the first, because
he
saw
was like,
that
we'll be 12-6. Like, we're gonna.
Yeah. And so I think that they reacted quickly to it. Also thinking long term when they made the switch to River. So I was like, okay, I like that. I personally like the River change because it's like he's still a great jungler. He fits what they're kind of going for. You're also looking long term because they extended his contract apparently. So I was like, okay, that works. But then they kept making changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what lost me. And I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that are detractors or not fans of either Olive and all this thing, just anything that's not working. They want it to be changed. But I think if you change way too much, then you don't actually give it time to find success. Like, when you add in River, there's a new dynamic. There's a new kind of infrastructure and who's going to be making calls and who you're going to be listening to. You want to give it some time. Obviously, it's the end of the split, so you're not going to give it too much time. You want to at least know if it's going to work going into playoffs. But then I think where they went wrong is, so moving up Blaze Olive is one thing, because you see Leader actually performing well in Academy.
Yeah.
So completely different environments, by the way.
Yep.
Academy and LCS,
Yep.
like different level of play and everything. But then you also move Ole, because you want to make this work, because you don't want to have you can't have more than 2 imports off the team because of it. So you bring in Prismal, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You're bringing in a completely new player in support for Prismal, who needs time, of course, and I think would do much better in Academy, given that new time in a new position. I think he's a great player, but putting him in a position where Ole is your primary caller, is a strong performer, but you're now taking him out to make this basically the change work. So this is way too much. And the fear now is you kind of have to, I think you kind of have to go back. Yeah, that's the worst part. I actually think you need to go back. You need to go back to Ole and Blaze Olive.
Get Price Stalker back in here. Just throw him in. River can go to Academy.
And now it feels like you wasted a week and games and like so much time. So you either commit to an idea that like brings you back to step 1, which is Prismal and Leader, or you go back to what was kind of sort of working, but you lost confidence now, I would assume, internally. So it blows.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a right answer to this.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to be sympathetic.
Okay.
Golden Guardians has tried to make a brand of development and spring to summer improvement.
Yeah.
And if we go all the way back to 2020, that was the like peak improvement. They 3-0'd TSM in playoffs before getting reverse swept by TSM, but that was the FBI closer Huhi roster that basically got sold to 100 Thieves when they had some funding issues in the offseason. And then they started 2021 and be like, we're going to frickin' do it again. Like, we are talent development. And they did the Niles iconic roster, Blaze Olive, etc. And they actually did show improvement from spring to summer. They brought in Licorice. They had a pretty good record in summer. I think it was like it was a longer summer split. It was 27 games. It was like 13-15 or something, like something actually decent. They come into this 9-9 with a lot of close games. They're still improving, but like depending on the goal, and this is a question I actually have for almost all of the LCS. Like, what is the business case or the goal of not finishing first? Like, is it to just not finish last, or is it to try and win? because everyone is given different decks in terms of their organizational structure. And if Golden Guardians is literally saying like, no, we need to be able to peak at Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
They may have been able to see enough, and you're never going to say this publicly because it's like, but they may have been able to see enough of their spring to summer roster this year to be like, you know what? That's not it. Yeah. Let's use these last 3 weeks to see if this other guy could be it. Like, should we build around leader in 2023? It's going to screw us. No one's ever going to make a change and be like, by the way, this is going to screw us for the rest of the year. We're packing it in, but we're literally thinking about 2023. Whether that was the intent or not, I think that is what happened. Now it is all about 2023 regardless. I don't disagree with what you're saying of there's possibly even a level of impatience there because like they literally were close. It's just because it felt like they were stuck for 6 months. They had to make these big changes. But yeah, I think they're doomed.
Winning.
I think they're doomed.
So I think they're doomed.
So do you think they're going to go back next week to Olive?
I think so. I think so because here's the thing: as much as they make it out to be that, losing funding is one point. I don't think Golden Guardians is ever going to or ever had been a big budget team.
Nope.
Like that's just not going to be what that organization is. Maybe if they find like a nugget, kind of like what they did with Closer.
It's weird because they are the highest spending NBA team in the history of the NBA.
Maybe that's hurt them. Too much of that luxury tax eating into their League of Legends budget. And so I think maybe when they do find a nugget like they do with Closer and Huhi and FBI again, they will invest. There's a case to be made for that. But I think very likely they're looking for that one golden nugget that finds, and this happens in any sport, where they're like, hopefully this player buys into them being a franchise player in this organization and that they see themselves winning here. Let's say in the future, if they ever find a European player or something like that, or if they gold mine, they get Speak on the team or something like that, though River's here to stay, I'm sure. And they're like, this is going to be the player we build around. Then the problem is I don't think they're going to invest in it. So they have to find a success right then and there. So I think they're going to try and win still. I don't know what next year looks like, but I certainly think that to make a case for that they're a team that's improving and find high, like putting value within the players. Because if you're in 6th or 5th, then the value of your players increase drastically.
Yeah,
suddenly Ole looks great. Yeah. Or a Blaze Olive looks great. Whoever succeeds in the playoffs, or River just looks even better. So you can either sell them for a higher cost, or you just say, no, we are gearing for next split with this player. And maybe we will find another player that wants to play with them. So I think they're still aiming to get the best possible result. This is not looking good right now.
Tough decisions. I think they're going to stick with Leader and Prismal. I think they're going to give them 3 more games. Like, dude, they have been COVID bopped like no one else.
Yeah.
When is the last time this team was in the studio? And like, you can see, if you're a fan, you can see, like, they're at this facility. Where's that player? Where's the mid lane camera? Dude's not there. Same with EG this week. Where's Inspired? He's just not in the room with the rest of them. He's in his bedroom. Like we saw, Fudge was in his bedroom with COVID earlier on in the year. Yeah. And that I think actually makes you play worse, which is another weird layer on this.
This has to be the most mentally taxing split for the team specifically. They had a piece that's come out. I still need to watch it fully, but I watched it a little bit. And yeah, like the fact that they've come to the studio a few times and then were sent back because of that.
Test. Yeah.
That's with a positive test. And you've only had like 2 weeks in the studio. And in this piece that they had, Blaze Olive talked about how, his family came in. And so he came, excited for that. Gets the positive test. So they're not even going to be in the studio to see him. That shit piles up. The frustration, the negative vibes, sure. Like, I don't think that means that if they had a perfect split, they were always in studio, that they're suddenly like a 5th place team. No. Yeah. But I do think that it's a much better situation. They don't have to go through all these dire changes. If at least one thing isn't working for them, at least they got a break. So there's some copium there. But yeah, this has not been a positive split for this team.
Yeah. Okay. That I think that does it for this week's JLXP. You got anything else you want to add? Any shout outs?
Nothing so far. I mean, shout out for CLG, another one. Just it's another proof in the bucket that that's not even a word.
Proof in the
That's not even
bucket,
saying. Proof in the bucket.
right below the
God.
Evan line.
It's another point case about developing the players that you have from academy. Sure, some of them has been on the stage before, but you put them all together with strong coaching staff and
Yeah,
strong enough environment that team has made a huge turnaround and are making a case for worlds.
I think
And we're seeing that
I think
now
they
have
have to
something to work
finish.
with.
I think they have to finish the job for it to make an impact. Just
Yeah.
like I think EG needed to actually win finals for teams to care more about NA talent, and we haven't even really seen that percolate that far down in LCS, like the JoJo Danny experiments. But
True.
if you have them doing JoJo Danny, and then you have CLG signing
Hmm.
promoting the top player from Academy in Dokla and Contracts, who was one of the best players in Academy last year,
Yeah.
grabbing the best to them Academy bot lane in 100 Thieves Academy from last year, promoting them. Like if that team can make worlds and also EG makes worlds, that's like pretty overwhelming evidence. But I think they need to
Yeah.
finish the job for this to matter. So I
I agree.
I kind of hope they do. Anyway, there's 5 more weeks to talk about that. Thank you once again for joining me, Raz. As always, and
Thanks for having me on.
I'll see everybody next time. Bye.
Peace.